this is my review of Solar Opposites. Okay, so in this episode, Korvo abuses time travel to try and fix Terry, which is a kind of backfires in his face toward the end of the episode. And also, and this is probably the part of this episode and this review that's probably going to get me demonetized, or worse. I mean, probably worse because I can't monetize my stuff yet, but, basically, long story short, how do I put this? Yumyulack grows a penis. That's all I can say. So yeah, it starts off with Korvo working on a ship part, and he's asking, and he has Terry on standby to make sure that everything goes well, and that he has to shut off the power exactly as Korvo's working on the device, or it's going to cause a lot of problems. And Terry merely responds that he's got his back, only for Korvo to suddenly get attacked by the machine, and Terry isn't around to help. As it turns out, he went to Disney World, and when he comes back, he eventually remembers, that Korvo was actually working on the ship, and then goes upstairs to help him out. And Korvo is understandably a little bit pissed at Terry because he sees that Terry is wearing the Disney ears, and is quick to point out that Terry went off to Disney World and wants him to admit it. Only for Terry, but Terry completely derails it and says that he's going to make it up for him. And sure enough, he does. He goes out to get some Mexican food and goes to actually try and make amends between the two of them. And sure enough, he brings back some Mexican food, but Korvo points out that he doesn't really like Mexican food, and points out that he's too busy anyway to eat. And points out that he's actually going to be using a device to actually fix something that was defective on the ship part that he was working on, so that it won't be defective in the future. Effectively, the way it works, and it's described very similar to a movie known as The Lake House, but effectively it's called the Lake House device for a reason. But effectively, how it works is that he puts something in a special mailbox that is linked up with sci-fi bullshit. It'll go back in time to before Schlort blew up, and then presumably the idea is that it'll get fixed on the assembly line before it's a defect, and enable the ship part to actually get fixed, well before it actually gets sent out and put into production. So, and it does work. He sends it through, it does get fixed. And at which point Terry points out that it works exactly like the Lake House, but Korvo argues that it is nothing like the Lake House. And then they go back downstairs to watch the Lake House, and Korvo realizes it's exactly like the Lake House. In any case, after they watch the movie, and Korvo admits he was wrong about it not being anything like the movie, The Lake House, he then asks Terry to clean up after himself now that they're done, and then they're going to go work on the ship some more. Except Terry isn't going to, and he's just going to lay on the couch for a bit. At which point, Korvo decides to ask Terry why he's so lazy, and Terry merely remarks that he was always been this way ever since he was a replicant, and that's likely never going to change. At which point, Korvo decides he's going to go off and change Terry. So what he does is he activates the ship's AI and asks Aisha if the ship is actually going to, if he can actually use the Lake House device to send it to somebody else other than the people who were supposed to get the letters. And Aisha responds yes, but points out that using so in that way would void the warranty, which he doesn't care about as long as he kind of fixes, as long as he's able to fix Terry. And with that, he starts sending letters back to Terry in the past. So the first one is to tell Terry to stop being so lazy, which Terry does because of a lie that Korvo tells him about how his blood will turn into blats. And Terry understandably panics and decides that from then on to stop being lazy. And then 5 years into the future, and then however long, but in the present day, Terry is now a much more go up, be active kind of guy. He actively takes charge around the house. He even cleans up the house. But there are still some things that Korvo noticeably is kind of annoyed by. and constantly continues throughout the episode to make slight changes to Terry's personality to make him more like Korvo, basically. By the end, I mean, I'm not going to explain it much because it's just these little things that Terry does every once in a while. But for the most part, Terry has these little habits that he just exhibits that are very Terry-ish. And Korvo doesn't very much like some of the habits that Terry does, so he constantly sends more and more letters back to the past in a very fitting montage that slowly caused Terry to become more and more like Korvo. So over time, Terry stops being his own person for the most part, kind of sort of. He just kind of winds up being exactly like Korvo. But in any case, yeah, that for the most part, that's all I'm going to talk about that. But in any case, I'm now going to cover the B plot because it does has to cover up with the A plot as well, because there are some things where it overlaps. But basically, long story short, it starts with Yumyulack putting a poster of Sigourney Weaver in his locker and pointing out that he kind of has a bit of a crush on her because she has a close encounter with aliens, and also she's very into sci-fi stuff, and those are both turn-ons for Yumyulack. Unfortunately, he gets bullied for liking Sigourney Weaver, not because he likes Sigourney Weaver, but because they don't think he could ever have Sigourney Weaver, and so he's bullied. And the principal, rather than do anything to stop the bullying, instead just piles it on and then gives Yumyulack 2 weeks detention for thinking he could ever have a shot with Sigourney Weaver. At which point, Yumyulack points out that he's tired of getting bullied, but Jesse decides not to push him on it. But eventually, Yumyulack just kind of tells her on his own what he's thinking about how he's not okay and about how he doesn't like being bullied anymore and wants to do something about it. And Jesse gives him the brilliant idea that he should go to join the gym and basically just becomes big and swole so that he can actually stand his own against the bullies. And while Yumyulack initially points out that he feels that that's a great idea, as it turns out he was lying and that his actual plan is to go get some venomous snakes, which he does. He goes to meet a guy in an unmarked van who doesn't have poisonous snakes per se, but does have platypuses, which are poisonous, I should point out. That's an actual thing. Platypuses are poisonous. If they scratch you, you will probably die. Fortunately, there aren't. Platypuses are kind of wild, and you're unlikely to actually encounter one, much less have it scratch you unless you piss it off. So, yeah. I mean, don't mess with platypuses, but you're probably going to be fine because platypuses kind of only really exist in the wild, and it's unlikely you're going to encounter one in your every day-to-day life. So, but in case, yeah, he puts the platypuses on a leash and takes them to actually go mess with his bullies, but they quickly prove to be a handful, and Yumyulack just kind of lets them off their leash and decides instead to try Jesse's idea and goes into the gym and basically tells the muscleheads there that he wants to get big and swole so he can have more confidence and deal with his bullies. Only for the muscleheads to point out that they're not actually muscleheads. They're exactly like him. Pointing out that even though they work out and got big and swole, that they still got picked on and they still didn't have much confidence. So at which point Yumyulack wonders if there's any hope for him. And they do respond that there is a hope, and that the ideal kind that they're looking for is some weedy-looking guy who is apparently getting all the ladies. And when Yumyulack asks them what's so special about him, they merely respond that he has big dick energy. I'm not making that up. That is a plot point in this episode. And I've already iterated that, but after Yumyulack realizes that big dick energy, or as it's referred to throughout the episode, BDE, which is a more family-friendly term we're going to be using from now on. He realizes that that the best way to actually become more confident is to have his BDE of his own. But when the other guys point out that he needs to be born with it, he merely responds, "We'll see about that," and then proceeds to do some sci-fi stuff, which, as I said, involves him using sci-fi technology to grow a penis, quite literally. And as he's in the process of doing that, Jesse points out asks him what he's doing, and asks him if he's still going with the platypus idea. Only for him to explain all the sequence of events that had happened since they last met, and Jesse points out that he's had quite the journey. At which point he points out that he's going to give himself BDE so that he can actually be more confident. And while Jesse is kind of proud with him and he's taking a more proactive approach, she also points out that he could be kind of dangerous. But Yumyulack doesn't care and does it anyway, and then gives himself a BDE. So that's what we're saying. But in any case, it does work. Jesse, everybody starts doing what he says, and starting to treat him more like a person and start hanging out with him. Case in point, he goes to school. All of his bullies apologize to him, and even the principal gets rid of his 2 weeks detentions and then gives him some of the things he confiscated to make up for it. And it's clear that Yumyulack has actually started to cause people to become more confident in themselves. And he's actually started to grow more confident in himself, and he's actually started to not a bigger person, but rather more people are starting to suck up to him a little bit more, and he's more than happy about that. But in any case, it then loops back into the A plot where at this point Korvo is kind of using his time traveling letter ability to make Terry want to sit down to actually watch a documentary on lovers, which Terry initially didn't want to do until Korvo sent a letter in the mail, and now Terry's all for it. At which point Yumyulack and Jesse come in, and Yumyulack just kind of commands the situation and demand that they watch what he wants to watch, which they do because BDE. But in case it then cuts to a montage between the two of them, whereas Terry becomes more like Korvo due to Korvo's constant meddling. Yumyulack slowly becomes more and more popular and more famous, and to the point where he eventually gets a gig hosting Saturday Night Live. But as they're watching a baseball game with front row seats because Yumyulack has since become that powerful, they're suddenly approached by Elvis Alba, a very famous actor who is apparently a member of the BDE Council. I'm not going. Yes. And they basically tells Yumyulack that his secret society is normally, if you can call it that, but his secret society is dedicated to making sure that BDE energy doesn't go completely out of whack. And that they've been monitoring Yumyulack for a long time, and want to point out that they want him to be a member of the council so that he can use his powers for good. However, Yumyulack refuses and decides that he's going to become even more powerful, so that even the council will suck up to him. And then proceeds to go home and give himself a second penis. So, yeah, and this is where the plot's kind of converging in because as Yumyulack is going on Saturday Night Live, which I should mention is playing in a background scene with Terry and Korvo. He accidentally blows up. He accidentally kind of blows up his penis, and it just causes a giant mushroom cloud to appear in the area, and it's so powerful that even radiation-proof garments can't protect people from melting. And two generals, General Mills and General Hospital. It's okay if you don't get the joke, but they start suggesting that they start coming up with ideas on how to actually deal with the situation. With one of them being that they blow Yumyulack up, but which Jesse is ultimately against. And then she decides that she just leaves and decides that there's only one person that can help Yumyulack now, but hopes that they'll be able to do it without her knowing who she's referring to. And sure enough, as Yumyulack lays dying, I guess, and contemplates all of his bad decisions up to this point, Sigourney Weaver shows up and then reveals that she's actually made of something far stronger than BDE. No fucks given. So, yeah, she uses her NFG to neutralize Yumyulack's BDE, and then she just kind of leaves and tells Yumyulack to be himself. And when Yumyulack asks Jesse how she was able to pull the strings to get Sigourney Weaver to show up, she immediately responds that she's a junior member of the NFG Council, and that while she's not able to vote on this situation, she's able to influence it slightly enough. And when Yumyulack asks why she didn't pull the string before, she immediately responds she was waiting for the right moment, and that she is just a junior member after all. So yeah. But in any case, that's the B plot. So it does eventually tie back into the A plot, which is that Korvo compliments Terry as they are now so in sync that they're basically the same person. And Korvo is quick to point out that he feels like Terry is basically perfect at this point, and that he does admire how much he's changed since. Although there is one last thing that Terry continues to say, which is that he continues to use the word tight, which Korvo again doesn't really like. And when Terry refuses to stop saying it, Korvo decides to send one last letter to finish up Terry off and make him the best possible version of himself. Unfortunately, when Korvo gets back, he discovers that Terry has become a murderous psychopath. So apparently using the lake house device too many times has caused Terry to turn into a murderous psychopath, and now he just wants to kill Korvo, and that's his entire character arc now. And it then proceeds to be a chase sequence through the house as Korvo writes one final letter to try and fix Terry, while also explaining that while also apologizing to Terry and explaining how it happened and what actually happened. And eventually culminates in them being stuck in the man cave, if you guys remember that episode. But she winds up in the man cave and takes the door directly in front of him, only for Terry to suddenly ambush him and stab him. At which point Korvo remarks that Terry should read the letter anyway, even though he's going to die. But Terry refuses and rips the letter up. And then does what can only be described as a civil state murder spree. He buries Korvo in the backyard after ripping up his letter and killing Korvo. When the replicants and the pupa come home, he murders them, and then he proceeds to start killing other people. Although he mostly stops once he meets a blind woman who isn't afraid of him, and they fall in love, get married. She accepts him as the murderous psychopath that he is. They find out that they're not able to conceive children for numerous reasons. So he kills the doctor for telling them that. And then eventually she reaches old age and she dies. At which point it's revealed that she actually put the letter that Korvo wrote Terry so long ago back together. And then Terry finally reads it and realizes that he needs to be himself. And realizing he needs to make things right, he writes another letter to Korvo, goes back to the original house, which has since been moved into by another family despite a murder taking place there. Several murders, I should mention. A family just kind of moved in, and they didn't even notice that there was dead bodies in the backyard. I mean, granted, they probably saw the flying saucer on the roof and thought, yeah, that's probably a good place to settle home. So they probably aren't the most normal of people. But in any case, Terry goes back upstairs. He delivers one final letter to Korvo if he's ever chased by a murderous, handsome-looking psychopath, to turn left, which works. The sequence plays out. The chase sequence plays out exactly like it did in the actual episode. Only this time, Korvo turns left instead of going straight forward through the door where Terry is waiting for him. Manages to get back to the ship and then delivers the final letter, which enables Terry to go back to normal. Terry reveals that he actually is still holding a knife, but he was actually cutting up tomatoes to make some salsa, and asks Korvo if he would like to join him. And Korvo merely responds that yes, and that would be tight. So yeah, overall, the A plot is just about Korvo accepting Terry for who he is rather than trying to change him. Which, in a quite literal way, might I add. That was the point of this episode. They used sci-fi technology to do that. But and also Yumyulack realizes that having PDE is just too powerful and that he should never try to do it again. So yeah, that was how this episode ends, and it's kind of cute. It's about Korvo accepting Terry for who he is, and Yumyulack deciding to never again grow a penis. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to let me know in the comment section what you think, or over my Discord, link in the description. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind liking, commenting, and subscribing, then that would be great. And also, if you check out my social links, again, there's my Discord down in the description below. Also, follow me on Twitter because I post I make sure that all of my notifications go there as well, so that you guys don't miss anything. I promote all my stuff over there, so just check that out. Also, if you want to check out my Patreon, then be sure to do that as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It helps me out, helps me make more projects for you guys. So if you guys want to see more videos from me, then be sure to check that out. And also, if you do decide to check out my Patreon, then you will be listed on my website. I also post reviews over there as well, and there's also a couple other things over there as well that you guys might be interested in. So be sure to check that out. And also, if you want to see more videos from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video I recommend to you based on YouTube's algorithms and what you've already seen from me. So if you guys want to see more of what you like or try something completely different, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!